welcome to On the Beat, the podcast that uncovers full frontal male nudity in cinema. My name is Laura, and I am joined by my turkey, Ryan.
What do you mean by turkey?
Because it's like Thanksgiving, Tomsgiving, gobble gobble.
Oh, right.
Tomsgiving.
When is Thanksgiving? As the time of this episode coming out, is it the week after?
Soon. Real soon. Don't you worry about the dates.
Yeah, I love how it's just kind of like, look, I don't need you to explain to me the exact date. I think it's like the 28th or something, isn't it?
All you need to worry about is right now is Tomsgiving, and Tom is giving us, Stuart, a life backwards from 2007.
He is, yes, he is.
Which is a biographical film, or as Tom Hardy and Benedict Cumberbatch like to call it, a murder mystery.
Cumberswatch. It's a murder mystery?
I don't know why they say that, but they found it very amusing in interviews to call it a murder mystery.
I guess it's a...
Even though this man actually did die.
He did, yeah. This is a real tearjerker. It's a real, like, the thing is, like, we have this film that we're covering right now, and then I can see what we have coming up. And it's a pretty rough holiday season for us.
Yeah, it's going to be very sad and very sexy.
Yeah.
As usual.
Get your tissues out for
both reasons.
Yeah. Certainly if you're a boy. A woman would never use a tissue, would she? Like dab herself off?
Goodness.
Has that ever been a thing that you've
Not
ever
that
done?
No.
As a female?
No. Wow. Okay. Didn't think we would be going here. Okay.
We're going back to the 1950s. We already know this.
We're just going to go back to 2007. Stuart, A Life Backwards stars Tom Hardy as Stuart Shorter and Benedict Cumberbatch as Alexander Masters.
Yeah.
And the film was directed by David Attwood, but we'll get to him in just a moment.
Okay.
Well, I tell you the synopsis, pulled from Letterboxd, which is... This annoys me because it just starts weird. Okay. Story about the remarkable friendship between a reclusive writer and illustrator and a chaotic homeless man whom he gets to know during a campaign to release 2 charity workers from prison.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know in what way Benedict Cumberbatch's character is reclusive at all. He has a lot of friends and a lot of activities.
I remember the story of those charity workers who got arrested.
The Cambridge 2?
Yes, I remember that story in the paper. Now, obviously, Stuart Shorter, I don't know if I ever really knew about him in the media. I don't know if that ever really was a thing.
Right.
But certainly the story, I didn't know he was an illustrator. Alexander. Didn't realize he was an illustrator.
That was all of the illustrations in the film were his.
Yes, I get that now.
Did you know that?
Well, no, I figured it out from what you just said.
You got it.
I did wonder about those animations. Those animations are pretty cool. They're all right. But I am more interested in the story of Stuart for the most part.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so unbelievably sad. Like, so unbelievably sad. Also, there's a little bit of, I think maybe at least with you, a little bit of ambiguity as to, like, Alexander's motives with Stuart at points sometimes.
I have seen this movie a couple times, and I came out while you were watching it because there was a part I wanted to watch again.
This is the first time I've seen the film.
Right. I've seen it a few times, and I think his character is a bit of an asshole. At times. I think he uses him a bit as a project and a bit he shows off a bit. Like, oh, look at my wild friend. Look at this project I picked up off the street.
Here's my wild, intimidating, poor, homeless friend who I'm writing a book about because he's so interesting and... he's so parallel to our lives as middle-class creatives and intellectuals and
He's
stuff.
like a party trick.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that.
I don't think it ends up that way, but I do think that he uses it that way.
But I did understand kind of your apprehensions as to, like, his motives. But the thing is that he's he is earnest. He is. It comes across honestly and affectionately with Stuart, because Stuart's not a. He's not like, the thing is, he is steeped in intellectualism himself.
Yeah.
Like, he has a decent head on his shoulders, and the things that hold him back is he has muscular dystrophy, he's an alcoholic, and he also is addicted to heroin. So those things set him back quite considerably. But he's street smart, he has an intellectualism about him, he's obviously quite well read, but obviously he has a lot of demons inside of him that he needs to struggles with.
Burn out of himself. Oof. But before we get there, why don't you tell us about David Attwood?
David Attwood,
who we lost this year in March.
We did, yeah. He passed away from his fight with Alzheimer's.
Ooh,
which is
that's
a shame.
The worst.
It is the worst.
Well,
but he was a British television and film director. He made the Peabody Award-winning TV miniseries Shot Through the Heart from 1998 and the TV miniseries To the Ends of the Earth in 2005, which got 6 BAFTA nominations. Now, he's mostly known as a TV director, let's put it that way. Bunch of TV, loads. He directed 18 episodes of The Bill, which I quite liked. But let's start and look at his filmography. So we have Wild West in 92, Saigon Baby in 95, The Fortunes and Misfortunes of Moll Flanders in 96, Shot Through the Heart in 98, Summer in the Suburbs 2000, Fidel 2002, The Hound of the Baskervilles from 2002, Breaking Through from 2003. I think it's also called On Thin Ice as well. It has a couple of titles. To the Ends of the Earth from 2005, then Stuart, A Life Backwards from 2007, and then Blood and Oil in 2010. But like I said, he was mostly a TV director, but obviously by the time he started getting sick, he was not making much in the way of that afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. I wanted to double check that To the Ends of the Earth was the film that Benedict Cumberbatch was working on where he got kidnapped and robbed. And I didn't realize that David Attwood had directed that. And he was like, I'll work with him again. Not that it was his fault. David didn't kidnap him.
Well, no, it's not that he didn't. It's not that he didn't work with him again. Stuart Life Backwards didn't come out until 2007. To the Ends of the Earth was in 2005. So there was the kidnapping before Stuart Life Backwards?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I see. Well, obviously, he didn't obviously blame him for that, the kidnapping.
No, because, I mean, how could he?
Yeah.
That would be messed up.
Unless it was Attwood that put him in the boot of a car and drove him around. So like, we're going for a party ride. It's like, okay. David.
David,
no, David, please.
I'm sure it was very traumatic for him. We're gonna talk a lot about trauma because of this film, considering how much trauma is involved in our characters in this film.
Yeah,
but also with the actors. So I feel like a lot of people might probably know already that Tom Hardy battled alcoholism and drug addiction in his early years, in his 20s.
Okay.
And he said that tackling alcoholism in this film in particular wasn't a problem. It was mostly meeting Stuart's mother and also portraying someone with muscular dystrophy. Yeah. Because he went to rehab for alcohol and crack cocaine addiction.
Right.
Tom Hardy himself in 2003.
Okay.
After he collapsed on Old Compton Street in London in a pool of vomit and blood. And he woke up and thought, this isn't for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So he went to rehab and then he ended up doing this film. And so he has quite a familiarity with the darkness of that particular condition.
There's a certain... Here's the thing. The first time you see him as Stuart, there's a level to which I'm like, because you don't know about his muscular dystrophy immediately.
No.
So you're kind of like, okay, so what's Tom Hardy's take on this character? And for me, there's a slight amount of apprehension when you first see him and he's shuffling around the way that he is. And you're like, you're like, is that 100% necessary?
Right.
You know what I mean? You're kind of like, it's like, is this correct? But the thing is that obviously the muscular dystrophy comes into play like later on in the story, and it starts to be explained the more you start to know Stuart a little bit more closely. Because again, the film is played very similarly to the book. The book is interesting because it literally is about Stuart and his life that's played backwards. So it starts with his death and then obviously ends with his birth, which I think is actually very interesting.
Like, how did we get here?
How did we get to this point? Which is kind of very film noir. It's very Sunset Boulevard in that respect, you know? Like that poor sucker. Look at him in the pool, dead. It's me, you know, and it's like let's find out how we got to this. How we got to this moment.
Because I mean, if we didn't say it already, this is based on a true story.
Yeah.
And Alexander Masters, who wrote the book, who is played by Benedict Cumberbatch,
Yep.
also wrote the screenplay for this film.
Also wrote the screenplay, which is, I mean, this film, at least to me, it is fascinating, and I like stuff like this because it's just really good. It's a good bunch of character actors just kind of letting rip. Now, whatever you might say about Benedict Cumberbatch's like portrayal of like Alexander, it's more a case of like, you know, it's written by Alexander himself, so there also has to be a level of honesty that's part of the storytelling here. So it's kind of just like, if we're looking at it from the perspective that we're like, oh, we feel like Alexander's acting a little bit like a prick, it's like, well, the real Alexander wrote it that way.
And they spoke on the phone on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So if he ever had questions, he'd go, oh, what about your glasses? Do you wear your glasses? He goes, well, I don't wear my glasses all the time. Sometimes I don't wear my glasses. And Cumberbatch is like, ? Okay. I don't know what to do with that information. But they were in constant contact. So anytime he had any inquiries, he could be like, dude, what's up? So you're right. Yeah. I mean, he wrote the story. So if he came off as an asshole,
it's probably because he came off like an asshole.
Right.
Because he wrote it that way. It's certainly, like, as a writer, and, you know, I think you're referring to at least, like, one moment in the story.
One moment really upset me.
He takes Stuart with him to his friend's, like, country house, basically.
Yeah.
And they're sitting after having, what was it? His convict
curry.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It does look like murder, that curry. Like,
it's funny because he didn't want to eat it the first time he made it for him. Because Stuart got council housing. And he was living alone. And obviously, Alexander's trying to write a book about Stuart's life. He finds it very fascinating. So he's with him all the time, researching his life, writing notes, and trying to get his stories down on paper.
Yeah.
And when he makes him he calls it convict curry, the first time he didn't want to eat it.
No.
And he looks very uncomfortable. And then, you know, he brings him to his friend's house in the country and has him make dinner.
Yeah.
And it's like a party trick. And I find it so upsetting.
Yeah.
Because Stuart's such an incredibly genuine character.
Yes.
And person.
Yes, he is. And there's something about, obviously, Tom Hardy's portrayal, because I think we talked about Bronson. It's just kind of like, Bronson's a career best. Like, I mean, I don't know at this point.
Yeah, is it this?
Yeah, Stuart's very, very convincing. And there's just quite a few facets of his character. Because the thing is that because of the way the story is told, there's parts of you that you are not supposed to sympathize with Stuart, but you sympathize with Stuart.
Absolutely.
And the thing is that he is a complicated man who has a very dark past, and he is dealing with a lot of very horrible and dark personal demons that have really set him back in life. And it's very difficult for you to not sympathize with him when he has moments where he cracks, where he breaks, where he basically submits to kind of violent outrages and stuff like that. And it's kind of, certainly when he's diving, like Alexander's diving into the story of Stuart to try and like plow these bits of information from him, he's very apprehensive to like let those stories out. But those little tidbits that he kind of puts out there, I mean, one of them, which kind of made me feel a little bit less endeared to Stuart, was he was talking about like child molestation, basically. And there's a lot of secrecy behind what was the one moment that got him sentenced to prison as like a category 1, like offense. And that's kind of bandied about a little bit, and you're like, is this what it's alluding to? And I will tell you this, spoiler alert, he didn't do that. He wasn't effectively the way that's...
I didn't even think about that. Maybe it's because I knew already, because I watched it so long ago, and I already knew that he was... Well, I think it's a really interesting way of putting it together, because you're saying how it's hard. It's like you don't want to sympathize with him, but you can't help it. But the worst of it is from his own childhood, and you do not know what that is until the end of the film.
Yes, because the life is being told backwards.
Exactly, and I think that's, if you had known about that in the beginning, you would always sympathize, and you would always feel bad. You go, oh, it has to be because of his horrible childhood and, you know, sexual assault and all of these things from when he was a little kid.
Yes, and he was a disabled boy, and he was bullied, and basically you find out that, like, the sexual abuse, he didn't commit any sexual abuse, he was abused by his own brother. And that happened for years and years and years, up to the point where he broke, and he's, like, forcing his mother, to send him into care, which consequently, going into care meant he ended up in the clutches of a very real predator of the time who also abused him for years and years and years and years, which kind of set him on this very destructive path.
Yeah,
but the way that the story is also told is that he's, like, again, giving out little tidbits, and he starts talking about the kiddie fiddling, and you can see from Alexander's face when he starts kind of bringing it out there, you're like, hold on, what has Stuart done? But it's because he doesn't want to talk about it, because it's 100% he was the victim in the scenario. But it's just something that has stayed with him his entire life and completely mapped out his pathway. So a very kind of self-destructive upbringing that's kind of led him to the pathway that he's in today. And the muscular dystrophy was just something that he's unfortunately just had to deal with for most of his life. So
right. Yeah. No, I think that it's a really wonderful way of telling that story, and I think it works perfectly.
Yeah. So I mean, to be fair, it's an interesting film to watch, but when it's at its very darkest, it's incredibly difficult to watch. So,
which is interesting because it starts off very light, and a lot of the movie is very light. It's kind of like a buddy road trip story for a lot of the film, and it's funny. You get to see Alexander loosening up and kind of getting into the groove of Stuart's, well, maybe not get into the groove of Stuart's life necessarily, but, you know, he would like wipe off Stuart's fork, you know, that he'd handed him. Yeah. Like he was just kind of gross, maybe a little grossed out by him. And then eventually they would drink out of the same beer can, you know, and they would share cigarettes or whatever. Like they would always be pals.
Yeah, because that's like, you're given little tidbits of information about how Stuart lives his life. And I think, you know, to begin with, he's quite charming and he's quite endearing, and I think his intelligence shines through. But the thing is that he's never taken seriously because he's seen as a member of the homeless community who's also an alcoholic, and he's also a drug user. So it's kind of like you don't ever take him seriously. And I think that's kind of the way that Alexander approaches him to begin with. is that they're brought together because they're protesting the arrest of the two charity workers, and that kind of begins this story. But you obviously see that Alexander turns him into a little bit more of a project, because it's a case of just like, even then Stuart realizes himself, he's just like, he doesn't want to feel like he's being exploited. But I think that's kind of where a lot of the charm comes in, is that Stuart slowly begins to open up, and he starts to really kind of share a lot of what he is and who he is as a person. So
it was probably the best person for Alexander to meet in the story, at least. Who knows what it was like in real life? Hopefully a little similar, because it did make Alexander a better person as well, because he even said that he was working at the charity because he didn't have to work regular hours, and it was just kind of an easy thing for him to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, do you care about these people? Do you care about the people who don't have homes, that are looking for assistance, that need help?
Yeah.
Stuart takes him to his house because where he thinks he lives, and it's in the woods.
Yeah.
And he's got the little poster of the Cambridge 2 tacked up on a tree.
Yeah.
In the woods.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can keep your stuff, your flyers and your envelopes at my place.
Yeah.
In the woods.
Yeah.
It's really quite tragic, but it ends up being pretty tragic eventually anyway.
It does end up being tragic, but it's more about how both of these characters, by coming together, enrich each other's lives.
Yes.
But the thing is obviously it's very difficult for Stuart to stray from the path of self-destruction that he's set himself on, because that's what all he's kind of known, effectively. And the thing is, I do quite like about the story is that, you see him drinking an awful lot. I mean, that's okay. But you never, ever see him taking drugs. You see drug paraphernalia, but you never see him actually taking drugs, as far as I'm aware.
He's a private boy in that respect.
Yeah, and I guess there's maybe an element of shame that's involved in that too, where he's just like, he's not going to do it in front of anybody.
Well, exactly, and that's also comes back to what annoyed me when he took him to Norfolk. He also... this ties in a bit to the penis scene. Well, it ties in quite a bit to the penis scene, but...
Yeah.
He takes him to Norfolk after he was told by the magistrate to not leave the city. And he goes, I can't go to Norfolk with you to hang out with your friends in the country because I have to stay here because the judge said so.
Yeah.
And he takes him anyway. I'm like, dude.
Yes. I think yes and no. I mean, he's also...
know.
Yeah,
I just think he's an asshole at this point. That's why.
But it's kind of like it's definitely about enriching this man's life, though. Like, it's definitely about that. Plus, he also had a car.
He did have the car.
You know what I mean? Because Cumberswatch in the movie can't drive, and even Stuart's just kind of just like, how can you not drive? But like Stuart doesn't have a license either, so he has a car somehow, but he doesn't have a license, and he doesn't drive anywhere he doesn't drive anything over 30 miles per hour.
Yeah, even
on a motorway. So,
well, he drives in the correct lane at least.
Yeah, I mean, he seems to be doing okay. He's not being caught by the police. I mean, again, like, it doesn't really matter if he gets caught by the police. I mean, he's already been to prison like 31 times at this point.
Yeah, he sure has.
Yeah.
I have all these notes about the beginning of the movie, and we haven't even... Maybe we're doing it backwards, as it should be.
Yeah, I don't know.
Then we're telling it forwards.
It's like the film is like this. It's like like you said, it's like a buddy comedy road trip, tragedy. Odyssey, tragedy, because what kind of ties immediately into like the Dick scene is that everything seems to be going all right. Like, everything seems to be going okay. Like, everything's on, like, an even keel.
Yeah.
And people seem happy.
The campaign is going fairly well. The book writing's going well. Stuart seems to be happy enough and thriving, and he's got his own place. And he's making delicious sandwiches with deep fried chicken and ketchup.
Well, that's bacon.
That was bacon?
Yeah, it's bacon. It's a bacon sarnie. That was a bacon sandwich.
He put raw chicken in the fryer.
That wasn't raw chicken. That was bacon.
That's gross.
That was slices of bacon in the deep fat fryer, and they curled up.
That was a bacon sandwich. Disgusting. But it was supposed to look gross.
Yeah, I mean, it's meant to look disgusting. But yeah, it's kind of covered in tomato sauce as well.
Well, he asked him brown or red sauce.
And he put it on a CD.
Because he didn't have any plates.
He didn't have any plates. Yeah.
That's one of the most famous clips of that film, and it's really funny.
Yeah. But, yeah.
He makes the greatest noises. I wrote that down. And I know that it's probably not it's not a great thing to say. Because, it might be because of his condition or because of his alcoholism, or it might just be part of his personality, but he makes all these really interesting noises.
I think it's all very involuntary.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's like, I don't think
not like he's wheezing or anything. But when he's making the sandwich, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's squishing it down. Yeah. And he makes this kind of moany noise. It's funny.
It's probably because his body is kind of...
Don't make me feel bad with what you're going to say.
I guess not, but he's not
acting.
He's not comfortable.
These are acting choices, okay? And his acting choices made me giggle, and I liked them.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy does not have muscular dystrophy.
No, he doesn't, but he probably met a bunch of folk who have muscular dystrophy, and he kind of reacted to that. Yeah, he's very good in this.
Tom Hardy. What a treasure. He is.
So back to the story and where we are. So basically the film, you think everything you think is going relatively quite well, something very dark happens, and this is what our Dick scene is.
Right. So Alexander is at a dinner party. Yeah. And he's drinking wine and he's talking about Stuart with his friends, and he sees a helicopter go past.
Yes.
And they all kind of look up. They notice this helicopter, and you don't know what it's about. It's kind of random at the moment.
Yes.
And then you find out what was going on later. This is about 43 minutes, 55 seconds into the film.
Yep.
And when you hear the story, this is when Stuart and Alexander are at court. And he's being asked what happened that night. Mm-hmm. And
basically, he's gotten a knife and he's effectively, in short, he's had like a mental break. And this has happened a few times in his life. It happened when he was younger. It happened when he was with his girlfriend who he has a kid with at the time. Mm-hmm. And he has these breaks where he just can't take it. And basically, he described it as the idea that the devil lives inside him, and he uses fire to purify the evil that's inside of him. And he really kind of sees the hatred and the anger and the violence that's brewed inside of him as like this demon that he's trying to excise to try and be a better person. But really, the aspect of this part of the story is that he's attempted to cut the head off his neighbor. And he's this has kind of sent him into a spiral, and he's got a knife and he's covered in blood, and he's
taped knives not only to his hands, he's taped knives to both of his wrists and his legs. And he's not wearing any clothing.
Yes.
He's got, what did he call it? A chip oil that was on the stove.
There's a chip pan fire.
Pan fire.
Aye.
And because he said that the police came by and they thought there was like an oil fire or something.
Yes.
that it happened.
Yeah, there's a
Burning
helicopter,
oil.
and because they're concerned he's going to burn the entire fucking complex down.
Correct.
So he's like screaming.
Covered in blood.
Covered in blood. He's, they have to raid his house. He's destroyed the place, absolutely turned it upside down. And he's,
We spoke in the Bronson episode about how he is maybe, and we should do this because we are scientists, but he's maybe the most naked man.
I'm not a scientist.
I'm a scientist.
Oh, okay. I guess so.
I'm a scientist, but I also can use a stopwatch. But I do believe that he's the most naked man. I mean, this scene is extended. Wow. I mean, you think about the scenes we've done in the past in intensity scales. Okay, you think about Bad Lieutenant, and I'm trying to think of like some really intense ones right now. You can tell me later, but this is.
I was gonna say Night of the Demon.
Sure. Sure, why not? Yeah. Stuart Alive Backwards, Bad Lieutenant, Night of the Demon. Really intense penis scenes.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, you just know this character and you're seeing a part of him that Alexander's not actually seen before.
Yeah.
Alexander's never seen him really break and really break down. And it's really upsetting and really sad just for him to see his friend tell the story where he's saying it was the anniversary of his brother's death. But you don't know what that means at that point either, because you don't know until the end of the film that his brother was the one abusing him as a child.
Yes, because you get hints because of Stuart's sister.
Right.
Because you find out that the brother killed himself and took a certain amount of pills that ate away at his internal organs and caused him extreme agony and pain, to the point where she's like, I'm glad he suffered like that, without ever knowing exactly why she feels that way about her brother. But then you do find out that she was also abused by her brother as well. So
yeah, and she was saying how she feels like they're quite similar, and she will be the nicest person in the world one second and then fly off the handle the next second.
Yeah.
And it's just because of how they were brought up.
Yeah.
Or not how they were brought up maybe necessarily, but more what happened in their youth.
Yeah, aye. It's it's pretty messed up. It's pretty horrid.
It is horrible.
You know?
It is really horrible, and it is just really hard to see because this is the only penis scene, but this isn't the only scene where you see Stuart absolutely losing it. And it's really rough.
It is rough.
Because when he's telling the story and he's so calm and he just looks so remorseful.
Yes.
And he doesn't want to tell these stories, which is where Norfolk comes back in, where Alexander's... Are we done? I don't want to jump back into what annoyed me about the Norfolk scene.
Yeah, no, story. I think we covered it relatively quite well. But it's kind of
Pat
just like, yeah, but it's also kind of like, there's also another element of the Alexander story where it's kind of just like he's trying to get this information out of him because it's all about excising things from inside of Stuart in a way to help Stuart. Now, whether or not we believe that or not, that's kind of down to how we feel like tonally or morally we feel like certain moments in the film are depicted. But I feel like that's kind of the intention. And he's just like writing it down because that's as much as what it is like one way of being able to cope and deal with your problems is to, one, talk about them, and two, and write them down and have them there on paper as well. So, yeah, but either way.
Well, it's definitely after this particular incident where Alexander gets to hear this story of what happened and how he tried to cut off his neighbor's head with a bread knife.
Yes.
And he said he would have done it too if he hadn't moved. And you see the look on Alexander's face where he's having a drink at a pub with his friend after him not going to jail. And he's on probation.
Yes.
And they're celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
And he's hearing his friend tell him how he would have murdered this guy if he hadn't moved.
Yes.
And you see his face actually kind of click into gear and going, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is, I hate to say a dangerous man, but kind of a dangerous man that he is hanging around with and he is in very close contact with, who can flip on a dime and who he trusts not to do that to him.
Yeah.
And he's kind of realizing, oh, I'm dealing with an actual person with actual problems.
Yes.
And it's not just a story.
Mm-hmm.
This is a real human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, well, I thought this is where he kind of realized that he should be treating him with a little bit more care and not as much flippancy as I feel like he did. But then he did take him to Norfolk and he's pushing him to tell the story of the very first time he was arrested.
Yeah.
Which bothered me a lot because he goes, it's Thursday, Stuart. You told me you would tell me the story on a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And Stuart is just in this really sad, quiet voice going, please, Alexander, please don't make me tell the story. Because he's with his other friends.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to tell the story.
Well, it really paints him out as like as a psycho, which is what he refers to him as when he first introduces himself to Alexander.
Yeah.
So
that part really bothered me. And he goes on to say how, oh, he only wanted to tell the story on a Thursday because that's when he get his dole money and he could buy heroin. So if he does tell the story, he can at least have heroin to make himself feel better. And he tells that to his friends.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, chill.
Yeah.
This is a private thing, and you're bringing this man into your life, into these other people's lives. Like, be respectful.
But I do think he regrets trying to get him to relive those moments, though, when he does actually tell them, because they're more horrific than he could have imagined them being. So, there is that. But I think, what you end up with is a film that is a celebration of, a man who faced great adversity. He had a lot of problems, and along the way, he is celebrated eventually, and it's celebrated in such a small way that's not only charming, but it's like it goes to show the amount of people that were affected, by him and his presence and stuff, which I think is actually quite nice.
I totally agree. Yeah. It's such a shame where, I don't know. He dies. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, it starts off basically.
It starts off that way, yeah.
with him passing away. But I was kind of reading up on Stuart and, I don't know, the actual story of what happened, which is similar to how it happened in the film.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, he walked in front of a train, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the story.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an overall kind of lack of evidence that Stuart purposely walked in front of the train, with the coroner's report stating that it was kind of contrary to how his body was positioned at the time of death. This is pretty dark, sorry. But
okay.
But there are hints that suggest that Stuart might have intended to die. And I guess he had a long history of attempted suicides.
Yeah.
And his sister had mentioned in an interview once that Stuart had let her know that if he were to ever actually commit suicide, that he would make it look as if it was an accident, because he felt like it was just too much to bear for his own mother to have two sons commit suicide.
Mm.
So he didn't, even though the one son was, well,
a piece of shit.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be too much.
Yeah. No, I understand that. It's
It's just such a shame, because it's like the Cambridge 2 get free and things are going really well and everything's on the up and up, and his sister got married and he was able to go to her wedding, and then it was just his time,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a bummer.
Yeah. Doesn't that fill your heart with whatever? Isn't this such a lovely episode?
Well, I did think it was funny because I've seen this a few times. I knew what it was like. I paused it at one point because I was like, I need to finish this later. It's too much. It's all too much at once.
Yeah.
And you started watching it, and I heard you laughing and laughing and laughing in the beginning of the movie because it is funny.
There are some funny parts in it, yeah.
But when I came out and asked you about it, you go, this isn't a funny movie.
No, it's very far from being funny. Yeah, it's not funny at all sometimes.
But I do like, the animations mixed with, the storytelling. It's very amusing. And him telling about his crimes with his friends, the menthol cigarettes and stuff. You guys have seen the film. It's very funny. Would you like to hear about the accolades and awards that this did not get? I'm sorry, it didn't win anything.
It didn't win nothing?
Well, Tom Hardy was nominated for Best Actor.
Okay.
At the BAFTAs.
Mm-hmm.
But he lost to Andrew Garfield in Boy A. Which is also a very sad film.
Boy almighty.
It was a dark year in 2007.
Yeah, it was a dark year. All right, well, there you go. That's a shame. Let's move on.
Yeah, do you have anything else to add?
No. I feel like we have followed in the tone of the film and tried to make some things funny. But it's actually very difficult to make things like this funny. It's very difficult.
Not everything has to be funny, and I think that's okay.
Let's just be serious and dark.
We're a dark and serious podcast now.
We are now. Yeah,
we don't even. You guys cry.
Yeah,
you gotta cry sometimes. You know what? It's not been a good end of the year, so we need to cry.
Yes.
We need more tears. We actually probably don't. We probably need things to lift us up instead.
Probably because this next month's going to be rough if that's what you're thinking. It's going to be real
really
rough.
Actually is.
Yeah.
But I love the films we're doing next.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fine. They're wonderful films. So, why...
Dog just farted. Do you smell that?
I don't... I have bad sinuses.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I can't breathe through my nose.
What's almighty?
It's a blessing and a curse because I can't smell delicious things, but I also don't have to smell farts.
Yeah, I was going to say, that fart is not delicious in the slightest.
Fresh baked bread.
Oh,
I don't smell it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
I also don't smell a fart.
Well, yeah, his farts don't smell like freshly baked bread.
I'm specifically not going to breathe in through my nose.
I
can smell.
They smell like meat.
He had a lot of treats today. He went to the vet, and he's a healthy boy.
It does. It stinks of something unnatural.
But because he's a good boy, he gets extra cookies at the vet, and then he farts up a storm. There you go.
He does.
Is that a lighter note for the end of this? Why don't you go? Can we talk about our dog for the next 15 minutes?
Maybe we could.
He's very handsome.
Yeah.
And he's a good boy. And
I'm also very hungry, so I'm also
annoying.
kind of just I'm ready to get this.
I am going
up.
to go into my ratings. I'm going to start. Thank you very much. 5 stars for visibility and context. The scene where Tom Hardy is nude in this film is very raw and very upsetting and very sad and very dark and exciting because there's cops and knives and blood and screaming and fire and it's intense and it's
helicopters
and there's wind and it's horrible. But good God, I mean, you just have a man screaming with knives taped to his hands and he's just screaming. He's just screaming and you're like, God damn, what the fuck is happening?
It's very visceral.
It is.
And it's a lot more
probably
animated.
Felt great to do as an actor to just be standing there and just start screaming. Probably feels awesome.
Yeah, potentially. But if we compare it to say a Bad Lieutenant or something, it's
he's just crying.
It's just less than it's just slightly. Well, I wouldn't say less intensity, but the action itself is a little bit more subdued.
It is less intense because he's just you're
subdued,
just oh, that's sad.
You're just that's really sad.
This is sad, but good Lord.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, it's wildly intense.
But yeah, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm like, is it a 4.5 or something like that? And I'm like finding it hard to justify anything but a 5. So I'll just probably agree with you on that one.
I mean, if you want to split up, visibility would obviously be a 5. Context, I don't know. I think context is a 5 too.
Yeah, but we've had this argument before where we've been like, because then you start questioning the meaning of the word context, and it's kind of like, well, this is within the context of this story, this makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's kind of...
It's not just a pushed in random bit of nudity. And it's also one of my favorite types.
No.
Where this is not... has nothing to do with sex, sexuality, has nothing to do with anything like that. Like, this is out with that. Like, it's not... It's like you don't want to see it. You're like, oh my God, this is horrible.
Yeah.
And really upsetting and raw. So like I kind of like that for that reason. Where you're like, Jesus Christ, this guy's having a moment.
Yeah, I mean that's the very least you can say is that he's having a moment.
It's not fun like buttering yourself up and beating up some prison guards.
Yeah.
It's not fun like that.
No, there's no aspect of this that's fun. Like, I mean, we kind of have to just put it out there.
But look at Tom Hardy. Look at Tom Hardy from this. Literally, Bronson is the next year. There is a little Tom Hardy here who's pouring out his soul. And then you've got Tom Hardy playing Charles Bronson in the next film. That is wild. Give him an award and give him the Sun and Stars. He's such a good boy. Okay, sorry. Would you like to read the film?
Yeah, what do you think you would give the film?
4.
4? I gave it 4.5 because I liked it slightly more than you did.
I mean, I can be on that same page. It's just so sad.
It's very sad.
But it's a great movie. It's a great film.
It is good. There are certain, because we've not really spoken about like how the film looks or...
It looks like a TV film.
How it's put together. Yeah, the film itself, like the way it looks, it's relatively quite unremarkable. But we watched it on HBO and we had it in the highest quality possible that you could get. I don't think the film is particularly easy to access either. We're lucky that it's on HBO.
Yeah, it was bought by HBO for it's the TV film was bought by them. So yeah, it's been on HBO forever.
Yeah, so it's probably where it's going to stay. It's not
DVD
going anywhere.
Is expensive.
It is expensive, but then it's kind of just like you don't. Like, I wouldn't probably want to see the DVD version because it would just look worse. And that's not to say the film looks, like, terrible, but it tells the story, and that's kind of really it. There's nothing really particularly remarkable about the filmmaking here. It's kind of more that it's like a quite astute, just very intricate, like character study based on a true story. So really, it doesn't need any of the flash or the bang to tell this story because there's enough that's been supported by the cast that you don't really need to faff around with it too much.
Yeah, you've got a great character study, a great character story. Like, I don't know if I need to see the Nicholas Winding Refn version of Stuart: A Life Backwards.
No. You do not.
I'm happy with this. This works. And it's, our young boys, our young Hardy and our young Cumberbatch, and they're really killing it. I mean, sorry if you're working in a movie opposite Tom Hardy, you're not going to look as good. And Cumberbatch is great. Cumberbatch is great, but
he's good,
Tom Hardy got the best of it.
He did, but they're a good double act though in this, and I think Cumberbatch is actually very good in the film.
He is great. I'm sorry.
And
they also became really nice friends during this film.
Well, that's nice.
I know you know what I love. A friendship story.
A good old friendship story.
I absolutely love a friendship.
A behind the camera friendship story.
A behind and in front of the camera best friend story about friendship and love, and it's wonderful.
Wow. Let's end on that note because it's nice.
Best friends forever. And they got to work with each other again in other films, and it's just so nice.
Oh, it's nice.
Friends forever.
It's all nice.
Wow. So happy to do Tomsgiving. I hope we get to do more Tomsgivings. I don't think there are any more Toms.
Oh, that's not very nice.
But there might be.
Oh, okay, good. End it on a nice note.
Happy Tomsgiving, everyone. I hope that you watch both of these films back to back with your family, and you guys will be closer and more best friends than ever. And coming to you from the Cock Tavern.
Run yourself a bath of gravy.
Oh my gosh, bathe yourself in gravy.
Tis
on
the
this
season
Tomsgiving.
for gravy. Tis the season for the gravy.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Gravy. Turn it off. Oh, I've been Laura. And?
I've been Ryan.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to switch this off.
Okay.
It's been nice.
It has.
Nice.